The sun crept over the rooftops of Oak Ridge Heights, a quiet neighborhood that prided itself on perfection, fresh paint, trimmed lawns, and matching mailboxes. But on this particular morning, one yard stood out, not because it was unkempt, but because it was alive. Tall oak trees stretched toward the sky, their branches whispering in the wind. Beneath them stood Daniel Miles, a black man in his late 40s, his eyes heavy with pride and pain. Those trees weren't just part of his yard, they were planted 15 years ago, in memory of his parents. But now, they were marked for destruction. Bright orange tape fluttered against their trunks, symbols of an order that carried no heart. The Homeowners Association, led by Mr. Whitaker, had decided Daniel's trees didn't fit the neighborhood aesthetic. When Daniel questioned it, Whitaker gave that smug half-smile he was known for and said, "Don't question the rules, Miles. The board has spoken." Daniel knew what that meant. It wasn't about trees, it was about him. The only black man on the block. The one they couldn't quite control. Days passed, and the threats piled up. Letters stamped with HOA seals, each one colder than the last, warnings of mounting fines if he didn't comply. Neighbors watched from their porches, some whispering sympathy, others pretending not to see. Daniel's sister Angela stopped by one evening, concern etched on her face. "Why don't you just tell them who you are?" she asked softly. But Daniel only shook his head. "Not yet," he said. By Friday, the battle lines were drawn. The HOA had sent a demolition crew, men with chainsaws and blank expressions. Whitaker arrived behind them, grinning like a man about to win. "Cut them down," he ordered. But as the workers approached, Daniel stepped forward, calm but firm. "Do you have a permit for this?" he asked. Whitaker barked, "I don't need one. This is HOA business." That's when Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out a leather badge holder. The crowd of neighbors leaned forward as he flipped it open, gold seal gleaming in the morning light. "Actually," he said evenly, "you do." Gasps rippled through the crowd. The workers froze. Whitaker's smirk vanished. Inspector Daniel Miles, City of Oak Ridge, Code Enforcement Division. Daniel's voice carried a quiet authority that silenced the street. "These trees are protected under City Ordinance, Heritage Preservation, Section 32. Any attempt to remove them without approval is a violation punishable by heavy fines and legal action." Whitaker stammered, his voice cracking. You can't do this." Daniel stepped closer, his words cutting through the tension. "You thought I was powerless. You thought you could bully me because I didn't fit your version of respectable. But I wrote the very rules you're breaking." He held up stamped city documents confirming the tree's protected status. The neighbors erupted, some clapping, others shaking their heads in disbelief. The workers backed off. Whitaker's authority crumbled right there on the curb. Justice, for once, had a face, and it was Daniel's. As the trucks pulled away, Daniel stood beneath the trees, his voice barely a whisper. "Mom, Dad, they're safe." But when the crowd dispersed, something caught his eye, a small black envelope on his porch. No address. No stamp. Just his name scrawled in jagged ink. Inside, a single line, "This isn't over. We'll make sure you regret crossing us." Beneath the words, a photograph. His children, playing under those same trees. Daniel's breath caught. His hands trembled, not with fear, but with fury. He looked toward the darkened street, shadows moving behind drawn curtains. Then his voice, low and steady, "If they want a fight, they'll get one." The wind rustled through the trees, their branches whispering like ghosts of defiance. The night was thick with tension in Oak Ridge Heights. The same trees that once stood as symbols of peace now swayed under the weight of threat. Daniel Miles sat on his porch, the black envelope still open beside him. The photo of his children haunted him, their laughter captured by someone hiding in the shadows. His sister Angela pleaded with him to leave, at least for the night, but Daniel's eyes never left the street. If I run now, he said quietly, they win. By morning, word had spread. The HOA meeting was scheduled for that evening, and whispers rippled through the neighborhood. Some said Whitaker was furious. Others said he'd called in favors from county officials to destroy Daniel for good. But Daniel wasn't the same man they tried to corner weeks ago. He had come prepared. He dressed sharply, badge tucked beneath his jacket, folder under his arm. Inside were documents, emails, photos, and records he'd quietly gathered. Evidence of discrimination, illegal fines, and misuse of HOA funds. The same rules Whitaker used to harass him had been broken dozens of times by Whitaker himself. Tonight, Daniel would expose it all. When he entered the meeting hall, the room fell silent. Whitaker sat at the head of the table, flanked by board members, his smile as cold as marble. "Mr. Miles," he said mockingly, "I assume you're here to apologize for abusing your position?" Daniel didn't flinch. "No," he said calmly. "I'm here to end this." Whitaker chuckled, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "End this? You're finished, Miles. The county is investigating you for fraud. I've already made the calls." Daniel placed his folder on the table and opened it. "Actually," he said, "you're the one under investigation." The crowd murmured as Daniel pulled out a stack of documents. "These are records of HOA funds misused under your name. False citations, selective enforcement, and personal property improvements paid for with residence fees. You tried to bury me under lies, but I dug deeper than you imagined." Whitaker's face paled. "You have no proof." Daniel's eyes hardened. "Oh, but I do. You see, every HOA board's financials are subject to public audit. And last week, I contacted the State Housing Commission." He turned to the audience. "They'll be here in 5 minutes." A collective gasp filled the room. The door opened, and 2 uniformed officials stepped in, badges gleaming. One of them nodded toward Daniel. "We received your report, Inspector Miles. We'll take it from here." Whitaker tried to stand, shouting, "This is a setup. He's lying." But the officials didn't listen. They handed him a notice, official suspension pending investigation for fraud, discrimination, and misuse of authority. The neighbors erupted. Years of silent frustration finally spilled out. One woman stood and shouted, "You fined me for planting daisies." Another man pointed, "You threatened to evict my sister." The room turned into a storm of voices, justice finally finding its roar. Whitaker's power, once absolute, crumbled to dust. He was escorted out, his face a mask of disbelief. Daniel stood quietly amidst the chaos, his gaze softening as he looked toward the door. The trees outside swayed gently in the wind, untouched, unbroken. Angela came up beside him, tears in her eyes. "You did it," she whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "We did it." The meeting dissolved into applause, neighbors approaching him one by one to thank him, for standing up when no one else dared. For showing them that silence is not peace, it's surrender. But as Daniel walked home that night, the air carried a strange stillness. He noticed the same black sedan parked under a streetlight, the same one that had followed him before. The engine idled, headlights dimmed. Daniel stopped at his gate, eyes narrowing. "You can come out," he called. The driver's window rolled down halfway, revealing a shadowed face. A voice, low and unfamiliar, said, "You've embarrassed powerful people, Inspector Miles. This isn't about trees anymore. It's about control. Be careful who you challenge." Then the car drove off slowly, disappearing into the dark. Daniel's jaw tightened. He turned toward his house, where his children were asleep and the porch light glowed softly. The trees rustled above, whispering against the night air. He whispered to himself, "They can threaten me. They can watch me. But they'll never break me." As thunder rumbled in the distance, he stood tall beneath the branches his parents once blessed, a man who refused to bend, even when the storm raged. The sound of wind echoing through the leaves. A final image fades in, Daniel's badge gleaming under the porch light, symbol of justice unshaken. Justice had been served. But somewhere, in the dark corners of power, another plan was already unfolding.